Hello again, Salem. Here we are once again. I am William Legault of Salem Digest. We're in the studios at Salem Access Television at 285 Derby Street. Been here since 1994. Not me, the station. And we're bringing you an interview with the second finalist in the 2023 special mayoral election, Dominick Pangallo. Dominick, how you doing?
All right. Thanks for having me back, Bill.
Well, you know, I kind of have to, but that's the way it is. But I appreciate you coming in. We're going to start off really simple today. It's a little something different.
Okay.
I gave you a little heads up on this.
All right.
There are no prepared questions today. It's just off the cuff, nice conversation. But explain to us your background, your Salem connection. Were you born here? Did you go to school here? And where you grew up, how you grew up, and when and how this political bug bit you in the backside.
So I grew up in Salem. I was born at Beverly Hospital, but my parents lived in Salem.
Whoa, wait, you were born where?
Beverly Hospital.
That's a problem.
Yeah, and they came across the bridge.
Yeah.
And I grew up here in Salem, in North Salem on Buffum Street, where I'm actually living now and raising my own family. My mom was a librarian at Saltonstall School for a while, and then she became a reference librarian at North Shore Community College, and then eventually retired as the director of the library for the college.
So you live on Buffum Street.
Yeah.
Is that the same house you grew up in?
Yep. It's a two-family house, so my wife and I and our girls live on one side, and my parents live on the other side, so it's,
nice.
It's great. My dad was a wrestling coach at Salem High School. He's inducted into the Salem High School Hall of Fame, actually.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
I'll have to genuflect the next time
Yeah.
I see him.
You get a little gold ticket that gets you into all the athletics events.
I know, I don't understand why I don't have one of those.
Yeah, you should petition.
For myself.
Yeah. He was a public school teacher in Marblehead. He also coached wrestling and football at Marblehead High School, and he was an elementary school teacher at the Bell School in Marblehead, where my brother and I went. I went to Marblehead schools, K through 12, because my dad was a teacher there, but I grew up in Salem. So I kind of had a foot in both worlds, friends in both the town of Marblehead and the city of Salem growing up, which was an interesting experience. A lot of my school friends were from Marblehead, but my friends through Little League, Cartoon League, youth soccer, just growing up in the neighborhood in North Salem were Salem guys and a few girls, and it was a special place to grow up. I loved it. Spent my childhood riding my brother and I riding our bikes around Green Lawn and buying candy and soda and comic books from Bill's Variety up on North Street. A special place in our memories.
Special place in my memory.
Yeah. So I after high school, I went to Bates College in Maine. I got a bachelor's degree in political science and theater, and I met my eventual wife, Kristen, there. After college, we moved back to Salem for a little while, and I had started getting interested in politics really in high school, but it really took off in college when I went and got my degree in political science. I did some campaign-related work in college. I actually worked on John McCain's campaign in 2000.
Nice.
His first campaign against George W. Bush.
Yeah, okay.
I took some time off from college to drive around the Granite State in the primary in New Hampshire for the McCain campaign, and then organized the state of Maine college campuses for McCain. And then after he lost that primary to Bush, I was pretty much done with the Republican Party at that point. But I came back to Salem after college, and my dad introduced me to this guy who used to wrestle for him, who was the city solicitor at the time, John Keenan. And John and I hit it off, and he asked me to manage his campaign for state representative. And that was the first time he ran. It was an open seat because Mike Ruane had stepped down. And he won the primary and then the general election, and I went on to work for him at the State House for a few years. And while I was working at the State House, I put myself through graduate school at night at Suffolk, earning a master's degree in public administration and a master's degree in political science.
Oh, nice.
Okay. And I was living in Salem at the time. We loved it here. We ended up moving away for a couple years for Kristen's work. She's a professor. She did her postdoc at Rutgers, and then got a job teaching at Colgate University in New York State. And we were living there when, about 10 years ago, Kim Driscoll gave me a call and said, would I be interested in coming back to Salem to take on the position of Chief of Staff at City Hall? And we jumped at the chance because we were looking for an opportunity to come back to Salem. For sure.
All right, so I got to ask, because I think you missed something there, and maybe I'm wrong. it's easy to get you confused with your brother. Weren't you both involved in a theater?
Yes, Salem
the
Theater
theater,
Company.
the Salem Theater Company?
So we set that up when we were actually still in college. And then for those few years after college, like 2003 through maybe 2007, was really like the heyday of my involvement with the Salem Theater Company. I directed a few plays for them, served on the board. It was a great organization. I think Salem I was a theater major in college, a double major with political science, and I was a theater kid growing up in high school. I loved the theater, and I think Salem is a prime place for great live theater. I'd love to see it come back here and really.
You didn't really think I was going to let you get away without revealing your inner geek.
Yes,
right?
I was a theater and band kid growing up. So.
Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at
No,
all.
not at all.
Okay, and so you're still living in the house at your parents, and your kids, your daughters,
Yep.
are attending Salem schools?
Yep. So my oldest daughter's in 7th grade at Collins, and our youngest is in 3rd grade at Bates.
So let me ask you, I have to ask.
All right.
I didn't intend to go in this direction.
Okay.
Salem school system takes a lot of abuse. Some of it perhaps rightfully so, a lot of it perhaps not rightfully so.
Yeah.
Why are your kids attending the Salem school system?
We're big fans of the Salem Public Schools. I mean, I think anybody who's part of the school community, who's been in the classrooms, met with the teachers and the staff, talked with the people who are part of that community, would feel a strong appreciation for the work that's underway there. We value the fact that it's a place that is very diverse, that they're receiving great supports from their classroom teachers, but also from the staff throughout the buildings. I grew up. My parents were public educators. I went to public schools. We have both Kristen and I have many public educators in our families on both sides. And I value public schools greatly, both from a philosophical and a personal standpoint. So I wouldn't want to have my kids anywhere else than a public school. I think it's important. And it just so happens I think Salem Public Schools are doing phenomenal work. Absolutely correct. There's a lot of work to do in many places. That's true for public schools throughout the Commonwealth. Challenges around learning loss from the pandemic, teacher retention challenges. There's a lot of work to be done, but I'm an optimist about our public schools. I think things are heading in the right direction. I think that our superintendent's doing great work, and I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Salem Teachers Union in this race. I think that they value that I'm somebody that's going to value public education.
All right. Well, you've given us that natural segue into the meat of the interview, of this conversation now. You brought up education, and I'm going to ask, this is more of a general question overall, but education is certainly part of it, so we can start off with that. Whoever gets in there in May is going to be faced with running a city. What are the most important issues do you think you're going to have to deal with from day one when you get in that office? Education, obviously, being high on that list.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that there are large issues that are priorities, and I feel ready to go on day one on those because they're issues that I've been working on for the last decade. I'm up to speed on them, and I'm ready to keep moving our city forward in terms of those issues. I think there's also something that has to happen immediately, and that's not as glamorous as we talk about housing and schools and offshore wind and all the big things that are happening. But really, the next mayor, whoever he may be, is coming in at a time of transition during a fiscal year transition. And we're in this strange place where typically the budget for the next fiscal year would be filed at the second meeting in May for the City Council to consider. And it just so happens the timing of this election has been scheduled in a way that means the next mayor may not have much of an opportunity, like literally just a couple of days, to really get their fingerprints on the next budget.
You're going to inherit a budget.
Yeah, which I'm not entirely crazy about. I think that if the next mayor, if that administration has to own that budget for the next year, and they're responsible for implementing it, they should have some more ability to influence what it looks like.
Well, of course, you had some say in this budget. I mean, the budget season really doesn't start till January, but there was some prep work prior to that,
There was some
I
work
assume.
done prior in December, but it's the overall philosophies aren't going to change too much. But there are places maybe around the edges where you would like to see some investments made differently, or some things prioritized in different ways. And I think that the next mayor has not only a responsibility, but also a right to say, you're duly elected, you're coming in, and you're going to be, because the budget starts July 1. And so they're going to have to be responsible for, like I said, implementing it, whatever it may be. And so they should have some ability to influence what it looks like. And that doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily be very different at all, but they still have that. I think that's an urgent, time-sensitive priority for the next mayor. In terms of big issues, I think the cost of living is certainly like the number one challenge. I hear when I knock doors, when I talk to voters, people in my daughter's friends' families in schools, like the challenges they're facing just making ends meet. And some of that has to do with the cost of housing and rents and home prices. But it also has to do with food security and utility assistance and even challenges like that, the cost of transportation going up, makes it difficult for people to be able to afford to live here. And I think that the city can take some positive steps towards helping address the affordability challenges that our community is facing right now.
Well, let's look at that. There's a house on Carlton Street right now. I don't know if you've seen it on Facebook. Number 6 Carlton Street.
Okay.
On the market for $329,000. They show some interior pictures.
Yeah.
This house hasn't been lived in I don't know how long.
Mm-hmm.
It has wallpaper from looks like the 40s and 50s still on the wall. It's asbestos, probably covered in lead paint inside.
Probably.
Less than 1,000 square feet. $329,000. What can you, as a mayor, actually do to affect that?
So individually, like that house price, you can't, like the mayor's not going to come in and be like, you can't sell that for that price. That's
right.
It's a free market, right?
That's my point. So
but what you can do is you can shape the market by changing the conditions that affect prices, right? So if you think about the most fundamental law of economics of supply and demand, the reason they're able to get so much for a place like that house on Carlton Street is because the supply is not meeting the demand in our community. So what is out there that becomes available is more valuable, and as it becomes more valuable, you can get higher prices for it, you can increase the rent and get more for rent. And so the challenge is, how can we as a city right-size our housing supply so that we're able to better meet the demand that we have as a community? I think we talked about this last time, but in the last decade, there were fewer new housing units created in Salem than the average decade of the 20th century. So there's a perception that Salem is building a lot of housing because what's being created is very visible buildings, like multi-unit buildings on entrance corridors and in our downtown. So they're very present. You see them. But in the 20th century, a lot of the housing that was created was very unobtrusive. It was single-family homes up in Witchcraft Heights, tucked away, and you didn't really see it unless you went out of your way to see it. So we're creating a different kind of housing now, and it's more visible, so it gets people's attention. But we're not creating it in the same quantity as we had been creating it in the 20th century. When we say we, I don't mean the city, I mean like the royal we, because these are all built by private developers and nonprofit partners. So that's part of the solution is like, we can't change the price of that one house on Carlton Street, but we can change the market conditions in the city by saying we're going to allow the supply to better meet the demand, and that's going to stabilize prices. Some of it is, just the economy overall, which is out of the control of any one city.
And people want to live here.
People want to live here. It's better than the alternative, right? Like, that's the other side, right? So it's supply and demand. If we reduce the demand, then home prices and rents will go down. But that means diminishing the kind of community we are, and I don't think we want to do that. We want people to want to be here. We just need to do it in a way that's managing the cost of living.
It's difficult to do. The state has a say on this with I'm going to go there, I hate this word, the gateway city thing. I really do dislike that word.
Yeah.
I don't like the way it's used, and I don't necessarily agree that we're a gateway city, but that's another discussion. But we have the MBTA station right there, and the feds and the state want us to build more housing, especially close to that. Yeah. Is there any way a mayor or a city government can not resist that, but look at that a little more closely? And so we have to build housing, but where and how?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's an increasing understanding that when we build housing in a way that's smart, that's located close to centers of employment and connected to public transportation or at least transportation hubs, that's the kind of housing that's better for the community. It's better from an environmental standpoint because there's less of a climate impact than large subdevelopments of single-family homes. there's less reliance on cars, which is better for traffic and better for local air pollution and also for the climate. And it also creates a density of market demand. So if we wanted to really encourage more small businesses in our downtown that were not just tourism focused, but also focused on our resident base downtown, it creates the market conditions to support them to be able to succeed. Salem already complies with the MBTA zoning law, so we don't have to make any changes. We already comply with that. But it is a great standard by which we can look at where are we creating housing. We have close to 17,000 people a day commute into Salem to work. So they're going to the hospital, they're going to the university, they're going to the courts, they're going
That's an MBTA number?
No, that's from the census.
From the census? Oh,
Right.
okay.
So some of them take the train, a lot of them drive. And you can imagine, right, if a fraction of those people could find a place to live that was affordable, close to the hospital or close to the university or close to the courts, would they choose instead to walk, or would they be having a much shorter commute that would not put those cars on North Street, on Bridge Street, on Boston Street, on Highland Avenue? And it's counterintuitive to say if you create housing, you can actually reduce traffic. But if you create housing in the right places, in the right conditions, it reduces the need for people to drive on those major corridors to get to where they're working.
All right, you brought the traffic up.
Okay,
You
fair
got
enough.
nobody to blame but yourself. It is an issue.
Yeah.
It's an interesting issue because the people that complain the most about it are actually the people that are contributing to the issue, the people that drive everywhere. Some people, sometimes you have to drive.
Yeah.
And we're trying to encourage people, all communities are, to find alternative transportation. Salem is probably leading the way on the North Shore in very aggressive efforts to change the way people travel within the city. Are we doing that right? Are we going a little too fast and throwing too much at people? And is it better to slow it down, or should we continue on the path that we have?
I mean, I don't know if there was a pun intended with slowing down. Like traffic is
It
pretty
was
slow.
not
and
intended,
you're on-
but yeah.
I don't think that we're going too slow. I think that this
No,
is,
going too fast. Is what I'm saying. Should we slow it down?
No, I don't think so, because I think that we talk about like major issues the next mayor is going to have to face. We talked about schools and housing. And I'll say like traffic is up there in the top 3 or 4 that I get asked about when I go door to door. As somebody that lives in Salem, I think we all experience traffic. That I say traffic is a 4-letter word in Salem, and some of the solution comes from like how we think about where housing is and how people are going to commute in their daily lives. Some of it is getting the public transit investments that we need, like expand our ferry service, complete the South Salem train station that we've been waiting for so long. Work with the MBTA to get more consistent or more frequent train service. The electrification project, which is granted going to take decades.
Or the mythical Blue Line extension.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm not holding my breath for that. But,
oh God.
Those kinds of things, some of which are outside of the city's control. But we have a great partner in the Lieutenant Governor. I think we have the opportunity to leverage a relationship with the administration to prioritize those things, because she certainly knows that these are needs here. But on the local level, I think as we think about ways to create transportation options that maybe encourage people or allow them to think about not having to use their car, so safer pedestrian access, multi-use off-street trails, options for people to be able to use a blue bike, take the Salem Skipper, which is a fantastic program that I would love to see us be able to expand and keep here. I was proud to be part of the team that made that possible through Salem for All Ages. Those are all ways that we're strategizing about how to reduce the need to have a car or to use your car as frequently. On the other side of that is the concept of how we build. Like the built city does influence the traffic patterns.
Absolutely.
And that gets back to my other point of when you place housing close to where people work or close to people can take public transit, they're less likely to need or use a car.
All right, so you touched on building and downtown building, downtown residents. That brings us into development, the dirty word, another dirty word in Salem politics. And obviously we've had a lot of development, not in downtown Salem, but actually we've extended the downtown quite a bit. And it looks like maybe we're going to extend our downtown more as the years go on. This Life Bridge project, looks like it may extend some of this development going up Jefferson Avenue. I mean, who knows? We got the Jerry's project building up. We got the Crescent Lot project, pretty good sized building. how much is too much downtown? I mean, honestly, I mean, how much more residential units can we build downtown reasonably? Are we there yet?
I mean, so obviously we are geographically constrained, and I think
Right.
that, just to bring it back to this, what I mentioned about, like, for example, the South Salem train station, the opportunities along Jefferson Avenue and Canal Street, when that train station goes in, you could consider it as an extension of the downtown, but really it's almost going to become its own micro downtown. Its own, like, the opportunities for housing growth, but also additional commercial growth in that corridor, centered around a new public transit hub, is, I think, pretty phenomenal. And it also spreads out the growth so that it doesn't seem quite as much happening in the downtown area. A lot of the growth Salem's had in the last decade or two has really been redevelopment of sites that used to be something else, right? Like tanneries, garages, factories. Yep. Not all of it, but a lot of it was. Those sites, when they were industrial uses, they had impacts. They used water, they used sewer, they had traffic from workers.
They polluted.
As we find every time we do a park project.
Every time you dig a hole in your backyard.
Right. So it's not, in many of these places, these are not like net new additions of buildings or activities or impacts. They're just replacing something that had been there previously. Excuse me. So they're not net new additions of impacts. They're replacing something that had been there previously. And I think we're thoughtful about growth and development, but at the same time, we can't meet our housing needs without being willing to talk about creating these units. And like I mentioned, right now we have one deed-restricted affordable housing unit for every 4 low-income families in Salem.
All right.
And those other 3 families are overextended in what they're paying for rent or for mortgage. They're paying far more of their monthly income than they can reasonably afford. And that strains the other things I talked about, food security, utility assistance. They can't make ends meet.
So, Canal Street, Jefferson Ave, MBTA, new train station. We had an incident in Beverly recently about air rights over there on Rantoul Street. What are the air rights over that old train station to include where the trains come in to enter the tunnel? If you're going all the way down to almost where Sidelines is. What's the situation for air rights there? Do they have air rights? Do the air rights exist? Do you know? This is out of the blue, this question.
That's a great question. I don't know. I do know that the conception for the South Salem commuter rail stop is not a station in the traditional sense. So it's not going to look like the downtown station or the Beverly station. It is literally a platform on either side of the track with a pedestrian bridge. The designs don't have a garage component, so there's minimal parking. It's really intended to be a neighborhood platform and a site for people to be able to access the university and the hospital.
From Jefferson Avenue?
From Jefferson Avenue, and I think also ideally from Canal.
Sure.
So you have that nexus of the multi-use path off-street and the train platform, so people could theoretically bike or walk on the path from anywhere from downtown Marblehead to downtown Salem to the platform and be able to catch the commuter rail without having to take a car. So you wouldn't even need the additional parking capacity. I think where the growth opportunities are around that platform, some of it is MBTA land, a lot of it's privately owned, but you think about those parcels, some of it's even the city's DPW facility, our DPS building, which is way past its useful life now. Does that become an opportunity for the city to think about relocating DPS to a different location in a better facility and using and making that property available for
Swampscott Road
growth? I mean,
who knows?
Who knows? Swampscott Road is certainly a possibility.
Well, I'm thinking about the airspace right over the tracks, leading right into the tunnel. And over the old station.
I don't know. That's a question for the MBTA. I'm
That's
sure
the question. I'm just saying.
There may be like safety or security issues with building over a tunnel, but I don't know. It's a fair question to ask. I mean, Beverly brought it up.
Washington Street is built over a tunnel.
It sure is.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's kind of segue into education here, because you brought that up earlier as a priority. Your girls attend Salem Public Schools. Are there any particular things within our school system that you'd like to change, that you think we can do better, or that should change? Now, I don't want you to irritate the teachers union, but if there any particular direction you already have in mind for any changes within our school system?
Instead of characterizing it as a change, I think it's how can we expand on things that are working and be able to do it in a way that's financially sustainable. A lot of the great programs we have in the last couple of years were funded by ESSER, which is the Federal COVID Relief Funds for schools. And we want to make sure that if it's working well, it's expanded and more broadly available. Like the Cartwheel program for mental health supports for kids, like that is close to being fully subscribed, and there's clearly a demand for it after COVID. Or not after COVID, because we're still experiencing COVID, but I think after the peak of the pandemic, and the learning loss was part of what the children were suffering from, but also the social and emotional impacts from being isolated from one another, the trauma of many of these children lost family members or know people who lost family members to the virus. So there's a lot of challenges, and if the mental health supports are critical, and I think they are, then that's a program that, for example, I think we might want to expand or think about making available to more kids, and then funding into the future. And I would also connect that to our teachers, like our teacher workforce. They felt the same stresses, the same mental health challenges that many of the children face, and they're dealing with a lot of the behavioral and mental health challenges that have been an outfall from those social emotional impacts in the classroom. So that's a place where I think, like, identify what's working and see if we can expand it and support it going forward. Can we grow our early college program, the public pre-K that we started creating, using COVID support dollars again, but how do we make that sustainable? Like, early education is so critical. It provides a strong start to every child as they go into kindergarten and first grade, so that down the road, you're really closing the achievement gaps, because they're starting with the base of support, the academic rigor, and also the understanding of what it means to be in a classroom. In a Salem Public School classroom especially.
All right, so I'm going to stick with the education.
Okay.
We're part of this regional folk system,
Mm-hmm.
and has its advantages and disadvantages like anything else. Is the North Shore Regional Voc really providing the services to our students that want a vocational education that it should be? Should we maybe return some of this to Salem? I mean, can we do a better job?
I think, yeah, I think that if you've had the opportunity to tour the CTE program, there's a career and technical education program at Salem High School, it rivals what you'd be able to get at Essex Tech. And I think that a lot of families are recognizing that if you want a high quality academic experience, as well as the technical education opportunities that come from that, Salem High School is where it's at, and that's one of the reasons why our enrollment has started to go back up, is that people are recognizing that. I think they do. The teachers and the staff and the team at Essex Tech do phenomenal work, but we're now in a time and place where every child, every child has should have the opportunity to go to college, but it's not an expectation that every child will go to college. So we need to make sure that they are prepared with the career pathway or the educational pathway that's the right fit for them. And I think that what's been happening at Salem High School over the last several years is really moving in that direction in a positive way.
All righty. Let's segue a little bit into Halloween and tourism.
Okay.
We have to.
Yeah. Salem, right.
But let's focus on how it affects the non-Halloween and tourism-related businesses.
Yeah.
Whether it be haunted houses, whether it be witchcraft shops, or just gift shops, or anything that cater to the Halloween business. Have we been treating the regular service-related businesses in Salem fairly? The hairdressers, the barbers, the attorneys, the dentists, the people that don't depend on that Halloween crowd, that don't cater to that Halloween crowd, who basically suffer for 2 months because their clients have trouble getting to them. Mm-hmm. Have we been treating them fairly? I mean, I look at Gagnon Shoe Repair and Alex's, the hairdresser on Front Street, as prime examples of businesses that either got priced out of Salem or just had to leave Salem because their clientele couldn't get here.
Yeah, but we have examples of retailers on Washington Street next to Roost. The expansion that Jamie and their team are doing. I think the new toy store that folks from Wicked Good Books are opening up. Annie's Asian Market that's opening up. These are not really tourism focused in a traditional like Halloween sense, operations that are businesses that are expanding here and finding their way. No, I'll tie it back to something I said before, which is I think when you have a downtown market, year-round downtown customer base, people living here, that grows the market for people who want to open a business that's not necessarily tourism focused. Also, I think it's important to recognize that the people that get their hair cut at those places, at those barber shops where they go to get their nails done, a lot of them work in industries that are dependent on tourism and travel economy. So some of the secondary impacts of that industry is that the person that does work at the tourist attraction is going to get their hair cut in downtown Salem, and that's going to benefit that business. On a larger perspective, I would love to see us doing more in partnership with Main Streets and the Chamber and even Destination Salem to market our non-tourism related businesses. How do we promote them so people know, like, if you're coming into Salem for something, or if you live in Salem, come downtown to do your shopping, and you have options here. I think they do some work in that space, but I think there's always more you can do to promote those types of businesses. Our visitor economy, the employment base that is connected to food services and those kinds of related businesses, restaurants and so forth, it's only about 12 or 13% of our employment base in Salem. Our biggest employers are still healthcare and higher ed, but because of the impacts of having 1 million people in a month come to one, like a very small couple square blocks of the city.
And it's already been busy this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I was at a meeting earlier this week where they're saying some of the hotels are sold out for like a Thursday in April, right?
Yes.
So we're on track for a busy season. It's not a faucet, right? We can't turn it off. We're not going to market "Don't come to Salem." But to your point, I think we can do more to support the businesses that are focused on supporting our resident base, especially the downtown residents.
Well, we've done a great job of marketing Salem in the non-Halloween season, obviously,
Yeah.
because all of these people are coming. But yeah, working to more closely with these smaller businesses, there's room for improvement. That makes
and I encourage them to think about when Destination Salem puts out their visitors guidebook, the tourism focused businesses tend to be the ones that buy advertising or get themselves in there. But I think if our other businesses downtown thought about ways that they could also be part of that process, they might be surprised at the customer base they could discover in our visitors.
Now, we're going to kind of move over a little bit, and interpersonal relationships are obviously very important in anything in this life. City government is not an exception. You need a relationship with your school committee. You need a relationship with your city council, with your staff in City Hall, and of course with the constituents. Mm-hmm. Do you feel comfortable moving forward that you'll be able to work with the school committee and with the city council to make things happen the way you want it to happen?
Yeah.
It can be difficult even when you think it's not going to be.
Oh,
Do you know
yeah,
that?
Absolutely. I think, I'm proud of the personal relationships and friendships I've developed over the last decade when I was working as chief of staff with the public employees that I had the privilege of working alongside, the elected officials, current and former, hundreds of people on our local boards who have volunteered their time and their service and their expertise to our community. I think that I would hope that they view me as somebody that's going to treat them with respect, to which they ought to be treated, and also it's going to value their judgment and their expertise as elected officials. The fact that they are the voice of their constituents. I'm proud to have over 20 endorsements from current and former city councilors and school committee members. I think it speaks to the fact that they trust that I will be somebody that's able to get to work on day one, and that I share their vision for what our community can be. So I believe so strongly, yeah.
I think one of the main issues, one of the main complaints, and sometimes maybe it was justified and sometimes maybe it was not, of Kim Driscoll's administration, you would hear a lot of people say she doesn't listen. And that's true but not true. Strong-willed person. And once she made up her mind, she made up her mind. You're aware of that. Mm-hmm. I'm aware of that. How are you going to deal with that? It's the listening part.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not Kim Driscoll, certainly, and I think people that know both of us would say that I have a very different approach to working with people. I'm a little bit more of a person that wants to kind of sit around and talk something out. That's my theater background, which is, Kim was a basketball player. It's about scoring points. We have our team. We're going to win. And that is a style of leadership that was very appropriate for Salem, especially when she came into office, and there were some serious challenges for the bad practices of past administrations.
She had a lot of ground to make up,
right?
yes.
My style of leadership is, just to go back to the theater thing, it's more about working constructively together to try to create something.
Going to act more as a director.
Well, in a theater, you're all creating the same thing together. You're working together as a team to create something, and it's less about the competition. That being said, I'll say, I'll use the accessory dwelling units thing as an example, right?
Just a good example.
She was, as a mayor, very focused on getting this done because it's low-hanging fruit. I mean, it makes no sense in the world not to allow for these to happen in our community. It's a key part of our housing needs, can be addressed through it if it's done right. Allows people to age in place, make additional income from their homes. It took us almost 2 years to get it done through the city council. And you could say she was singularly focused on getting ADUs done in Salem, which she was. But you can't really say she wasn't willing to compromise because along the way, numerous concessions were made to change the ordinance to make it more palatable to more and more people. So it was an example of something where she knew what she wanted to accomplish. And I think it was the right goal for the community. But the perception was that she's tenacious about this and won't let it go. She actually, I think, made many compromises to that ordinance over the couple of years it took us to get it done. In order to get it completed. And I think some of that can also be addressed in advance by, it was a learning experience, I think. We're seeing this now with our short-term rental ordinance, the wetlands regulations for Concom, the flood hazard overlay zoning. Now as we approach even inclusionary zoning, as we approach big challenging questions for the city council, how much pre-work can we do to build collaboration and consensus before something gets filed? So we're not fighting it out in a city council meeting or in a committee meeting. We're having public informational meetings, inviting people to come in, shape what this looks like, getting stakeholders together, and then putting something before the council. And that way everybody feels like they have some stake in it. They have some ownership and they can feel comfortable about it. And it doesn't take 2 years to get something done. It should take just a couple months.
All right. I'm going to close out my part of this, and I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to talk to everybody out there. Master plan. Yes, I mean, we talked about it before. I just, should we? Should we?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before. I think this is, it's time for Salem to take another look at our master plan. It's,
all right.
It's
very simple.
It's been very long since we've done so.
It has been a long, long time. So at this point, the camera is yours. If you just want to speak to the camera and to people out there, got the election coming up.
Thanks.
It's up to you.
Sure. I'll just say, my name is Dominick Pangallo. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk with you, Bill, and to talk with everyone at home. I really believe Salem's at a pivotal moment right now, and we can't go backwards. We're moving forward as a city that strives to work for and welcome everybody. It's a place where I grew up and that I love deeply, and I'm still deeply invested in as a public school parent, as somebody who's raising my family in this community, and as someone who's served it for the last 10 years as your chief of staff. I believe that Salem needs a mayor who shares the values that have made us a beacon of prosperity across the Commonwealth and shares the vision of what our city can be. A mayor who's ready to get to work on day one because they've been doing that work every day for the last decade. I ask for your vote on May 16th, and I invite you to join the campaign. My website is pangalloforsalem.com. Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Yeah.
And that's it, guys. That's Dominick Pangallo. As he said, the general election is the 16th of May. I should have checked to see when the last day to register is, but I will get you that information on the Facebook page this week because you need to vote. You absolutely do. So this is William Legault from Salem Digest in the studios at Salem Access Television, 285 Derby Street with Dominick Pangallo, signing off. Don't forget to vote.